basically what happened there, the outside world is against us, and they are doing some building work at the moment outside my apartment, and they have so nicely just cut the the line for 30 seconds. So hopefully I'm back and everyone can hear me.
Howard, I was just saying in your absence that we were just talking about keeping yourself motivated as a leader during these very difficult times, and the things that we can really be trying to do during these weeks ahead. And I think the next, as we all accept, the next 2 to 3 weeks are going to be particularly challenging, as we are now reaching the peak of this particular virus. So we can expect, and we're hearing with the Prime Minister, more and more bad news until things plateau, which we're hoping is going to be in 2-3 weeks' time. And then hopefully we start to see a little bit more optimistic news coming in. Mm-hmm. And we were just about to talk about the areas of focus for business leaders. And I was about to say, I think, and one of the most important things has got to be not only our own mental well-being, keeping our own minds and indeed bodies as best we can strong, but also being very aware of the need to take care of the people that work for us. Both those guys that are working at this point on salary, and there's still quite a number of those, of course, and people furloughed, and how important it is to be consistently active with them so that we make sure that they still feel very much a part of the team. So Howard, I know you wanted to pipe up around this point as well.
Yeah, I think the sort of questions I've been asked by my clients who I'm doing sort of now hourly mentoring sessions with is during sort of these times, you know, working day to day can be extremely distracting for a business owner or managers. And they've been asking me what really their key focus should be from a business perspective to make sure that they are focusing on the right things right now, not looking at further ahead or not looking backwards. It's right now that the issues is, and what should they be focusing on. So I'm interested in what you've been saying to your clients, and I can give a view of what I've been saying to my clients as well, Paul.
Howard, can I just ask you, is everybody still online? Because I've got a screen that's saying that we have a problem still.
There are still 17 people online, Paul.
Everyone so they can see you? Okay.
Can you just drop us a question to make sure everyone can still hear us? I think a hand went up there from someone. Yeah, we can still hear us. Cheers, Ricky. That's much appreciated.
Well, thank goodness for that. Okay. Well, I think clearly one of the questions that keeps coming up when I'm talking to people is really around chasing down cash. I mean, it's obviously an important point. We know that we're dealing with organizations who are, like we are, had to down tools. There is a worry that some of those organizations may not come out of this situation particularly well. If you've got monies owed to you by those companies, you do need to chase down your cash. And I'm going to emphasize your cash because it is your money they're sitting on. Let's hope that not too many businesses go under, but there's a distinct possibility. You've got to find, I think, the correct tone, whilst you don't want to be appearing to be pushing and harrying to the extent that you upset people who survive, and then remember that you were too intense during this time. But at the same time, you've got to find a method of getting your money in. And if that means looking at payment plans with some organizations, which I'm aware of with some of my clients they've arranged with clients, then that's what you do. But it's, as a business owner, as a business leader, it's a very important focus at this moment in time. Making sure that money's owed is brought in. And in many instances, many of my clients are owed a considerable sum of money. So all looks lovely on the books, but unless it's in the bank, it doesn't really do us a lot of good. And at a point at which we're not earning an awful lot of revenue, getting that money in pretty sharpish is definitely a primary focus every day. I think one of the other points, and we've talked about this recently, is how you forecast any level of revenue over the next month or two. To my mind, I think, and this is a point of it involving your staff. Perhaps get the people that are not furloughed, the guys working with you presently, to give you reasonable estimates of what they believe they can actually achieve during this period. And I think reasonable and realistic is the important words here, because we are still capable of making revenue, and some areas of recruitment are still reasonably relatively busy, particularly around areas like IT, and obviously if you're involved in healthcare or the distribution chain logistics and distribution chain, then you will still be making money at this stage. So I think there is a method of making some level of forecasting, but I would add it's a twofold forecast. You're looking at the immediate weeks ahead and being reasonable in terms of what your revenue is expected to be. That's got to be aligned with your cash flow forecast, which is obviously relative to your ability to get that money in fast. I think where you might normally have 30, 45 debtor days, you might be extending that in terms of forecasting given the current situation, knowing that your clients are likely to want to hold on to your money longer than they would normally. So you'll factor that into your forecasting. But I think the second area is, of course, keeping your eye on the long game, because we do expect that this is a pause button effect, that we hope that we're not in this situation for terribly long and that we can start making money again, getting back to business again. I think reasonably by, let's hope, by back end of May, mid-May, certainly by June. And I think that we need to be conscious of the goals we set for ourselves prior to this situation, and still hopeful that we can start to climb back as the year progresses this year and certainly into 2021, and look forward to much better times ahead. So I think we shouldn't lose focus in terms of where we set our goals for the business. Obviously, it's incredibly distracting and worrying at the moment. We can't minimize the impact, but who's to say that when we get back to business, in particular into next year, we don't have twice as good, at least a half, 50% better year next year than we expected in our original forecast. And we mustn't forget that our clients are at least as profit focused as we are. They're going to want to come back to business, hit the ground running, and try to make up for lost time as quickly as they can. And of course, if they're doing that, they're going to take us with them. So there is a real possibility, despite all the gloom and doom merchants out there, that we could actually bounce back extremely quickly. And I think those are the messages we've got to give our staff to keep their motivation high, make sure that they're as aware as we are that this is simply a pause. The world has paused for 2 to 3 months, and that we all hope and pray that it will pass very quickly. And as leaders, we have to remain strong and focused. If we lose that strength, then obviously that impacts on the people that work for us. So to some extent, despite the fact we're all worried about it, and there's no point in saying we're not, of course we are, we can't display that. We've got to show strength with our guys. That's to a large extent about humour. We're very good, the Brits, with humour. I'm sure, like me, you're receiving daily videos and WhatsApp messages that make you laugh. It's one of the great things about our culture is we always find the funny side even in desperate situations. So let's keep the humour going, keep the social activities going with our people, the pub nights on a Friday, the drinks, the beers on a Friday evening. I understand some people did the virtual Grand National over the weekend. All those kind of things make a difference. And let's just make sure we look after those guys that in the good times look after us.
I think what you're saying there, Paul, is very much what we were talking about on Thursday on a different webinar, is that cash flow and forecasting is very important. But really, if you're thinking about sort of looking at taking loans from banks, etc., having your worst case scenario, best case scenario, and that middle point of what you actually truly expect to come in is a really good thing to have. Then you've got a full lens on your business and what's going on within your business. It's also then about looking for new opportunities within the business now. What can you do and what would your clients need that would generate revenue and generate cash, such as outsourcing? There'll be lots of clients out there who've not just only furloughed people, but we're making people redundant. Could you do an outsourcing service for them? You've also got things like interview training, client profiling. Now's an opportunity to really get inside your client and know what your client actually truly does. And rather than hiring on skills, is start to hire on behaviors as well. We do know that what happens in this sort of marketplace when the market starts to recover, perm is still going to be very, very harshly hit from most places. And what happens is the contract market really accelerates away, and then the permanent market follows that. So again, understanding the profiling of what your client's going to be looking for, whether it's contract or perm, and the type of behaviors they require from those type of people, well, I think it'll be critical to help people get out the blocks really quickly. And it's certainly something that they should be focusing on now, that if they haven't got a temp desk or a perm desk, a contract desk, then you should be thinking about how you can start to create that, what's needed to create that, and then start to talk to people in the marketplace that can help you create those type of desks and those opportunities for you within your business. So I think it's important that we sort of look at those things and work from there. So I think it's a fairly sort of interesting answer. What I'd like to do is sort of run a poll and launch a poll now to everybody to vote on. I hope you can all see the poll. If you can start voting straight away, it's what's most important things that your business at this moment in time, what's most important to you as your business moment in time. It's interesting, people instantly jumping on business pipeline. So if people can keep voting, cash flows now sort of coming up. That's really interesting. Any more votes? Oh yeah, votes are coming in now. Oh, cash flows coming back to business pipeline. Pipeline's still taking. He's like the Grand National itself here. We should.
I'll just add to your point, Howard, about the emergence. What happens after a situation, a dip of this kind? And
any more votes on that? Right, I'm going to end the vote there. Okay, and then share the results. Right. Okay. Sorry, Paul, you were saying?
Yeah, I was just saying, I think, just to pick up on your point, that I think what we will expect, and we've seen it when we've come out of recessions in the past or dips in the past, is, as you've said, the interim market is very much an area that grows very quickly. Companies are very reluctant initially because of their lack of confidence to take on a large number of permanent staff. So their natural reaction is to look for people that can help them in the short term. So if you're a provider of PAYE temps or contractors, you've got a great opportunity coming up. And I think as we're going to talk about this, talk to candidates, you need to be aware of who's immediately available. So you can take those candidates to market once we have the opportunity, hopefully in not too distant future. The perm market then comes back shortly after we see that surge in the use of interim staff. So this I'm absolutely sure will be the case once we emerge from here. If you're a perm-only business, I think you need to give strong consideration to being able to provide temporary or contractor staff. Now's a good chance, therefore, to talk to finance businesses, to get some funding in place to enable you to provide temporary staff, or talk to umbrella businesses and so forth, to get your act together in that sense, because there will be an opportunity to make revenue very quickly.
So it's quite interesting looking at the poll results that 73% said business pipeline is the most critical thing, or the most important thing to the business and working from there. So moving on to the next question that we sort of started to look at, which over the past 3 weeks, again, I've been asked by numerous business owners about doing business development during the crisis. And I think it's really important that we understand business development during the crisis and what's going on with that. And I think before we start to answer the question, I'm going to ask a quick question of everybody. Do you think you should be doing business development now or not? Because I've had so many different conflicting views, and I know we've got our view, Paul, but I'll be interested to see what people say now, so you can start voting on that. But as they're voting, Paul, if you want to sort of give your views, I'll be very interested.
Well, business development is a really tricky subject at the moment. I've lost count of the amount of discussions I've had with clients around this point. The general consensus, and I subscribe to this view, is that pushing to get new business at this moment does seem futile, is probably too strong a word, but it's extremely tricky. I think employers are feeling very concerned at this moment. Like the rest of us, they have no real understanding of when they're going to get back to work. So it's difficult, if not impossible, for them to be giving commitment at this stage. And it kind of feels just slightly wrong to be pushing too much to ask for business opportunities. I mean, clearly, if your clients have got assignments to give you, vacancies to give you, then obviously you're going to be talking to them about business, and that's a standard conversation. Putting forward candidates for opportunities that are active and live, or are just becoming live, absolutely, we're back to what we've always done. That's not an issue. But for organisations that have literally closed their doors for the time being, then really having BD calls in the truest sense seems just inappropriate at this moment. And I'm going to emphasise that at this moment. I think there's no reason whatsoever for you to cut ties and not be speaking to clients. However, I think it's just important to keep in touch with them. It's almost pastoral care. So just picking up the phone, finding out how they are. We often talk about the trusted advisor positioning that we all move towards with clients. We're trying to get to a point where we have extremely close relationships with those customers. They trust us to the extent that we have a dominant position when it comes to recruiting on their behalf. And if you have those relationships, and I'm sure you do, then reaching out to those organizations, those people in those organizations, and asking how they are, how their families are, how they're coping, what we can do to help them, offering free help in lots of respects. I think that stuff goes a long way to cementing relationships, and people remember that. When we get back to normal, they remember that. Business comes your way if you've been kind and reasonable. And I think that tone of voice with customers right now is extremely important. People will remember after this is over how you behaved during this time. And that applies to your own staff, of course, as you know. And you treat people with kindness and care and consideration, and you act as a decent human being, which I know we all will do and are doing, then people remember that. But there'll always be rogues in every industry. We've heard about them in our own, which is hugely regrettable. It's always unfortunate that the minority get publicised. The vast majority of us are all doing the right things, but one or two bad eggs, they get mentioned in the press. It's always bad news. People remember all of that. So, you know, it's a thing about karma. What goes around comes around. If we treat people well at the moment, from pastoral care perspective, it also applies to candidates, and we'll talk about that in a moment, then I think that we'll get our opportunities when the clouds clear and we can start working with our customers again. So that tone of voice is important. I will add here that I think if we're hopefully getting to a point in the next 2-3 weeks, please God, where the worst of this awful situation is beginning to plateau and subside, it's at that point, I think, where we start to get a bit more optimism in the press, in the media, that we can actually start talking to customers about what their plans are when they get back to work in terms of recruitment, whether that's short-term, interim, or permanent. And I think it's the timing that becomes quite important. So I think you can be speaking to customers right now, very soft touch. But as time goes on and we get to a point where things start to improve, then I think you can be, as you would be, a little bit more firm with your questions in relative terms to what they are planning to do going forward. And I think that timing is important. It's just not there at the moment, in my opinion. But I think in another 2 or 3 weeks, we may be in a position to start pressing forward. But we have to be aware of the ever-changing environment we're in and how quickly things are moving. So I think that's something to be reviewed on a daily, weekly basis. And obviously, through these webinars, we'll be giving our views as time goes on. I think the last point I want to come back to this point is candidates, of course. And everybody knows that we have never been in a better place as an industry to talk to our candidates. Everybody I speak to that's phoning candidates are getting through to them almost instantly. So huge number of candidate calls going on. Again, I think soft touch, how are they? How are they coping? Reaching out to them, offering assistance and pastoral care, helping them to overcome this current situation as best we can, and very, very gently just prodding to see what their plans will be once we move from this position, which, as I say, with luck may only be another, I don't know, 3 to 6 weeks. Let's hope so. And then we can start to assist those people. And again, I'll come back to the earlier point, which of these candidates are likely to be available immediately, because these are the people you want in your candidate pool that we can offer out to customers who need instant assistance and support.
So I think looking at that, what I've been saying to my clients is absolutely the same thing. Yes, we should be still doing BD, and we should be a little bit more providing that more pastoral care to our clients about what they're doing, what they're going through, and helping our clients through this moment in time, because they're obviously going through the same thing as we are and having the same issues as we are from a recruitment point of view. So we should absolutely be doing business development, but again, it should be based per client. So you'll know your clients who are recruiting, those that are furloughing, those that are making people redundant. You should know what's going on within those clients. So you should treat each client accordingly, and then start to look at that opportunity for when the market starts to come back, how you're going to come back with that client and what you're going to do with that client. And I think sort of moving on, we're now into sort of week 3 into the lockdown, and it will continue. I think next Monday is the deadline date that they put, and I think next Monday we will probably extend the lockdown for at least another 3 weeks, if not longer. And I'm now working with clients, helping them sort of keep their teams fresh and motivated. Paul, what are you advising your clients to do in order to stop repeating themselves and keeping the staff motivated? And that's staff that are working and staff that are also on furlough.
Yeah, look, I think this is a question that's been coming up a lot in the last few days. You know, it feels like we've all been in lockdown forever. I mean, the reality is, what is it, 2 weeks? Something like 2 weeks?
Just 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you're saying that you think that it might continue for another 3 or 4 weeks beyond Monday. I mean, who's to argue? We don't know at this point. Let's hope not. But I mean, the prospect of being stuck indoors for the next till the end of May, even potentially, is just, it's not a pleasant prospect. But I mean, it is what it is, and we have to deal with it. And I think that, you know, talking to people that are managing businesses entering this week, which, as I said, is just a few weeks on from when we went into this lockdown, already it feels that people are running out of ideas. And I think, and that's to do with the point I was making earlier, that, you know, we're getting into that period of time which the government warned us about, the health experts warned us about. We're moving daily into a worse situation. It has to get worse before it plateaus and gets better. And of course, the media is full of this information. At one point I will make, and I've been saying this to people all week long, is that get your guys, if you can, to turn off the television and the radio. And there's an awful lot of misinformation out there at the moment, the so-called experts, and you could literally, you know, cut your throat if you listen to all of the bad news, a lot of which, frankly, is just speculation. My advice to people is watch the news once a day, whatever your choice of news is, Sky, BBC, whatever, and try not to get influenced by the other noise on social media and in the media in general. A lot of that isn't true, and will only push you into really strong negative thoughts and your staff into that position. So keeping this sort of upbeat view is very important. So back to your question, how do you come up with new ideas during this point when there seems to be lots of weeks to go? And I think that comes down to a lot around your own team. I sat in yesterday in a call with one of my clients I've worked with for many years, a wonderful client down in Bristol, works in the construction sector. He's got an amazing team of people. We did it on Zoom, and my client Jim was asking, what do you think we should do, guys? Should we do this week? And we had some great ideas coming out of that phone call or that Zoom call from the guys that are working. Some stuff that we'd kind of planted, if you like, things we'd said previous week or two that they liked and that they feel comfortable about, and some really new ideas which were excellent. And I think keeping your people involved and coming up with new ways of doing things, new priorities, is very important. And in my experience of running big businesses, some of the best things that ever came out of marketing activities we did, particularly around the Office Angels days, weren't coming out of our marketing department or from me particularly. They were coming from the people, if you like, in the front line, people talking to our candidates and clients who had outstanding ideas that generated a huge amount of revenue for our business. So I think you must, as I'm sure you do, ask their opinions. There are no bad ideas. We always say that. But some of the craziest ideas turn out to be the best ideas. So I think keep on involving your people, get new ideas from them. I think it's about, as we've been saying all along, setting daily goals. To my mind, it's about realigning your targets. I mean, what we saw as the norm prior to the last month or so is no longer the norm. So what does success look like? It's a bit of a cliche, but in this current situation, what does that look like? How many people are we going to speak to on a daily basis? Candidates, clients? What number is reasonable? It could actually be higher than normal, given what I said a moment ago. We can speak to candidates much more easily than we could before. So what's the number that we need to be talking to? What information are we putting on the CRM every day? And I think it's a brilliant opportunity to gather intelligence, speaking to candidates about their employers, understanding what's going on or was going on in their organizations, what their employers' plans are once this changes. So gathering that information. So we're very clear about which employers, clients, we want to get very close to once we have the opportunity to start working with them again. So gathering those leads on a daily basis should form part of your morning discussions. So what did we find out the previous day? What's useful to us? Not today, because we can't do much with that information right now, but in a month, 2 months, 3 months could be incredibly valuable information. And what information are we getting around the candidates themselves? What assistance are we giving them in terms of improving their CVs, getting them ready for whatever the new world of work is going to look like? And clearly as well, I think we've got an opportunity here to use this time effectively to train our people. Howard and I do a lot of training around this, doing a lot of training around this time. And in fact, under the furlough rules and regulations, it's almost as if the government are recommending that even furloughed staff can go through training. And I think that applies not only to our people, but also to us. What an opportunity to spend a little bit of personal time improving our skills, thinking of our strategies, looking forward, rethinking and remodeling what our businesses should look like in this new world of work. So I think there's no question that when we emerge from this, the world of work in 2021 onwards will be a different place to the one we left behind a month or so ago. It will be very different, and it may be in a much better way. Often, and you could look at history, when the world comes out of crisis, world wars and so forth, even though there's a point where the gears need to be starting to change, we need to start changing through the gears, we start from a halt position to move forward. When you look backwards at the past, you recognize what progress you've made. And I think that we will look back in a few years and realize, although this was dreadful, it actually was a catalyst to better things. So I think we've got to try and imagine what the future is going to look like and start making those exciting plans for the future to support our clients and candidates going forward.
I think there's some interesting things there, Paul. I think one of the questions there on training, which is very interesting, Ricky's asked me a question on training, that he's training a resourcer at the moment, and they've obviously furloughed the resourcer. Can they carry on training under furlough? Yes, you can carry on training under furlough. What I'd be very careful of, though, is that training, if you're doing training that's live training to candidates and clients, it might be construed as you're actually doing business, and therefore that might jeopardize your furlough loan that will come when they pay your 80%. So just be very careful now. But if it's genuine training and you can prove that that's the type of training you've done in the past and you've got that documented, then I don't see any reason why you can't carry on doing that training if it's live training on the phone for your furloughed candidates, but carry on training the furloughed candidates. I think, to me, what I've been saying to my clients is absolutely your business strategy needs to be all about what you're doing, what you've just talked about, Paul, but it's also about setting new targets and setting new goals for your staff, because there'll be different targets and different goals, and it's about how you do that. And it's what we talked about earlier on there today, was about success today is not about hitting goals and targets that you would normally have hit 3-4 weeks ago. It's about hitting things that will have a massive impact on your business in 6, 7, 8 weeks, 10 weeks time, whenever we come out of this situation. So it's about setting targets there that create that onward momentum that will help you accelerate out of the blocks once the situation calms itself down. The other thing was talking about there, which was very interesting. It was about getting ideas and informations from your staff and from other people. And I think, having working parties, especially when we're now working from home and everyone's working remotely, having working parties where you've got 3 or 4 people working together to actually bring a solution, as long as they're still working and not furlough, is absolutely the right thing to be doing, because again, you're bringing team spirit in, you're bringing people together to deliver stuff back to the business for when the business starts to move. So creating working parties that which you wouldn't normally create, I think, is very important and very, very good for the mental well-being for your staff and the interaction of your staff within the business. So therefore, you've got to keep doing those type of things constantly. I'd also be thinking about your technology stack and what you're working on and what you're using. Is it fit for purpose? Is it fit for purpose in the changing world that it's going to be when we come out of this? So is your technology stack going to be a hindrance, or is it going to be a benefit to you as you come out? So yes, people like Zoom and GoWebinar and GoMeeting, etc., and Interview and Odro, etc., have seen a huge increase in their business. So everyone's jumped onto that digital wave, but how does that digital wave connect to the rest of your business? Does it actually work? Does your business and recruitment process now involve those type of things? So again, you could be start reviewing all of those things and bringing those together. So I think, what's the most important thing that you've implemented into your business is really, really critical, especially during lockdown. So let's run a very quick poll on what we think is, I'm just rushing a poll. There we go. So if you can answer that poll, what is the most important thing that you've already implemented in your business since lockdown began? People can start voting, so I know that that's actually working. Can people answer me? Can they actually see the poll?
I can't see it, Howard. Just so that you know.
The poll. Can anybody else see the poll? Nothing there.
This technology's not really worked today, is it?
Technology's been great today. Right, okay. So I'll end that poll, even though no one can see it, because for some reason people can't see the poll, and we'll just move gainfully on, okay, from there.
We'll get it right next week.
Yeah. I think, for the last sort of major question of the day, as we can't sort of push the polls out, is both you and I, Paul, we've lived through and survived numerous business downturns and numerous recessions. And it was very interesting yesterday, JP Morgan predicted that when business restarts, that the perceived, and they used that comment, the perceived recession would be deeper than 2008. And I genuinely think that we'll probably come out and it will go into recession for a period of time. But as we said, it's very different to the 2008 recession, which was caused by the bankers. This is caused by something that's just halted business to a stop. So how the business comes back from that will be depending on the cash flow and the quality of each business that is moving forward. So there will still be a lot of business once it starts to move again. It won't just stop. However, there will be roadblocks, I think. And so I'm interested to Paul to see what you think, what roadblocks do you envisage that will happen once business starts to move forward and starts to drive the economy again?
Well, I mean, look, firstly, let's just make a very clear statement that recessions do not mean that you cannot make money. I mean, I think it's commonly known that some of the biggest and most famous organizations in the world were launched during recessions and depressions. Walt Disney set up his business in the Great Depression. Microsoft, Apple all started in the mid-70s during a recession. I can give you innumerable examples of companies who have set up during terrible times and have gone on to become huge global players. So I don't think it follows that a recession necessarily means that we or you have a bad time. I used to say, certainly in the Office Angels days, when I visit the offices, and if an office wasn't performing well, I'd say to the manager, look, let's walk out into the high street here and look up and down and look at how many competitors we have. If you could take a temp booking from each of those competitors, it wouldn't matter what the economy was doing. And I think that the truth is that so long as you have competitors and they have business that you would like, there's business opportunities there. So I please don't feel that a downturn in the economy is necessarily a position that means you cannot make money. What it does mean is that you do have to work smarter, you have to be cleverer, you have to be on your toes, you have to reinvent yourselves, you have to be that classic 1% better than everybody else. And for me, no one wants a recession. Obviously, we'd far prefer to have a booming economy, but it is the natural cycle. We can't, even without this pandemic, we were heading towards something of that nature. It's natural. It's the realignment of the economy. And it's the way it's always been. If anything, as I say, I think it's overdue. So we are going to go through this and we'll come out the other end. But the fittest of our businesses will survive, and not only survive, will prosper. So for me, I think it's certainly not welcomed, but it's normal. And having been through 4 or 5 and still here and breathing, I can assure you, you can still do extremely well during these times. I think, come back to your question, Howard, I think in terms of potential roadblocks, one of the most important things is the morale of your own people. Now, as leaders, it's really important for us to be constantly talking positively about opportunities and identifying those opportunities, and being bold in terms of the way we manage people and the way we get our guys to perform on a daily basis. Because again, when they are consistently hearing and seeing negative information through the media about the economy, it becomes a woe is me situation, a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because if you consistently tell yourself life's awful and it's terrible out there and it's not possible to make money, guess what happens? You don't make money. So I think that we really will have to work very hard on training and developing our people, getting them to work very smart, identifying opportunities. Back to my point earlier about trusted advisor positioning. We'll want to step up the level of client contact we have. We need to be out a lot. And I'll emphasize a great deal because, you know, if you read any of the management, the classic management leadership books, the Stephen Covey type books, they always say, and they're correct, that 70% of our time as leaders should be spent looking out of the business, talking to customers, being aware of the market trends, the sectors, the sector trends, being involved in associations, getting close to our customers. And the opposite is true, unfortunately. For the most part, in recruitment as leaders, we spend 70% of our time in the office dealing with staff issues and challenges and minutiae. And that's not to say those things aren't important, but we have to, particularly during a recession, be striking a very strategic position so that we can lead our people in the right direction. And if you bury yourself in the office during these more difficult, challenging times, your business goes nowhere except backwards. So I think it's going to be extremely important to be very aware of what the market is doing, and you'll get that information, you and your people, by being consistently out talking to customers or using, thank God, technology to connect with them. One thing you've discovered is that you don't actually have to be in front of clients to talk to them. You can do it through this methodology. So staff morale becomes really important. Their reticence and their lack of confidence becomes important to you. And as business leaders, you have to constantly bang that drum very loudly. One of the things I said to Howard earlier before we came online today was, you'd normally say that, you know, when we get into a recession, things couldn't be any worse. You'd be thinking that. But actually, one of the ironies about our current situation is that whatever happens going forward, it's a better place than we are in today. I mean, this is about as rock bottom as it is likely to get in our lifetimes in terms of business, let alone from a health point of view. So you can look at the sort of upside and say, well, whatever happens, things are going to improve. As tough as they may be, it will still be better than where we are today. So, you know, in these times, you know, of adversity, it gives you strength. And, you know, as I say, we should come out stronger in many respects. You need a recovery plan as well. I mean, one of the problems we have currently with this situation is the problem that governments do not have exit plans out of this current situation we're in. We don't have end dates or how we're going to get out of this situation. Now, we can be sympathetic because this is a pandemic and nobody yet knows the cure. But in business, we need to have exit plans. We need to have recovery plans. And we have the opportunity to develop those plans at this moment. We have the time on our hands to start thinking ahead. We don't have the answers, but one thing's for sure, we need to have the direction. People will follow you if you have a firm understanding and a belief in where you're going, even if you yourself are not entirely sure you're going in the right direction. People will not follow you if you look and sound foggy and uncertain and confused and scared and frightened. So a level of strength is really important. And even if you feel uncertain, you don't, and you must not demonstrate that or say things that could be construed as you feeling weak in front of your staff. They need strong leadership, particularly now, and they'll need it too when we come out of this. So I think that's very important. Marketing and BD, as Howard was saying, is something we can start, as I was saying a moment ago, slowly getting into in the coming weeks. Which clients are going to come out of the blocks fast as we come out of this? How close can you get to them, and at what point can you start talking seriously to them about the future? And understanding your client base, getting a deeper understanding of your customers is going to be extremely important. And if you don't do it, you may find your competitors have jumped in front of you and you're too late to the party when we emerge from this. So figure out methods of constantly touching base, keeping close to your clients, and indeed, as I said earlier, keeping very close to your candidates during this difficult time.
I think, you know, from my experience coming out of a recession is very interesting, and your Darwin quote there was a very interesting one. And to give you the proper Darwin quote, I think it's a very fine difference between what the survival of the fittest, because Darwin's quote was actually, it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent. It's the one that is the most adaptable to change. And that's the Darwin quote that most people misquote. It's not the survival of the fittest, it's the one that is the most adaptable to change. If I look at it from this point of view, and I've always looked at a recession, is that, it's as if you're starting a business from afresh. So what could you do? And everyone's in the same blocks, everyone's in the same situation. You're all starting your business from afresh. So what can you bring out? So I always find the stumbling blocks with this was lack of confidence in the market. Well, I always said during recession is that there's no such thing as a recession for recruiters. There's only a recruiter who can't find a client that's actually buying. So it's about understanding your client base and knowing who's coming out. The backside of that is then staff morale. If you're forecasting and you're properly talking to your clients and you understand what their project timeline is for staffing, then you can start to see where your peaks are and you can start to see where your trough is. You can then start to see where you need to do to then fill that trough in to make sure it continues as a peak and an upward curve. So staff morale and staff reticence is always challenged by actually what they're doing. And if they're always talking to clients that aren't recruiting and not doing it, then that has that manifestation in their own brain that the market's not going. So you have to start to find clients that are going to start to move and move forward. So you've got to start looking at that. So some of that is about having the lack of a recovery plan or the lack of understanding what the market is doing to go from there. And I think the best way that I had it described to me was in 2000, as we came out of the millennium period, there was a small recession there from an IT perspective. And my manager at the time, or my boss at the time, said, we need to be on the coattails of all our clients. And my comment was, I do not want to be on the coattail of any client, because as soon as that client accelerates away, I'm going to get flipped off that coattail because I'm not going to be able to hang on to it. What I need to be is in the pocket of my client and going on the journey with my client. And therefore, I need to understand my client intimately on what they're doing. Otherwise, I will lose ground on my competitors who are already in the pockets of my clients. So it's a very, very distinct difference about trying to catch the market up, because we're now in the same place. It's now about getting ahead of the market and being stood on the start line with our clients and working from there. So from a roadblock point of view, I looked at what would stop me doing that. And it would be lack of focus on the right clients, but also lack of focus on what the clients actually now want from our marketplace. So if I start to talk about the digital stack of your business, everyone's now riding the digital wave, and they've all got Zoom, they've all got Odro, Interview, etc. Okay. What the difference is what do you do with your CRM, and how ready can you get your CRM ready for action? There is AI out there now that can do incredible stuff with your CRM, such as grading your CRM, prioritizing your CRM, and finding out who is available, who's not available, who's got the right technical skills for this job, that job, which means that your CRM then is ready to go if you've already interrogated your CRM and you know which candidates are ready to go and which candidates can move forward. That way, you've already got then when your client's moving forward and you're in your client's pocket, you're automatically producing candidates that are absolutely right for your client. So it's very important that you can't see potential roadblocks. What you just see is a potential hurdle that you must clear. And that's about being adaptable change and adaptable what's going in the marketplace. And I think it's really important that whatever market you are in, there will be clients that will come out of this period of time absolutely flying and chomping at the bit. You need to be able to identify those clients quickly. Otherwise, the roadblocks that you're going to have are those clients that aren't coming out of it, and you're going to be dodging those rather than being right at the front at the sprint with the clients that are leading the way. So I think having a good financial footing for the business, having a good marketing process now for the business to stop you losing ground and making sure people see you constantly is hugely important. So having a spending paralysis on your business is the wrong tactic at this moment in time. Having a sensible spending approach to the marketplace is advisable, depending on what you want to be doing and how you can move forward. And I think the way I looked at it, Paul, all the time, going through, the mid-90s recession, the early 2000 recession, the 2008 recession, was those that adapted to the change in the market, because every time there's a recession, there's an improvement in recruitment and there's a change in how people deal with their clients and their candidates. Those that adapt are the ones that actually survive and prosper, but prosper through the recession period and then accelerate hugely away once that starts to sort of move into more lucrative times and lucrative waters.
I mean, I think I'd add a few points here. What we've learned in the last few weeks through having to do this is the ability to work from home. Now, I think a lot of companies, as they go forward in our industry, will be thinking, do I need big offices? Do I need offices of the size I've had in the past? Can we have people work from home some of the time? Do they work 2-3 days a week at home, 2-3 days a week in the office? Can we desk share? So you can envisage a situation where costs become less evident. We can squeeze costs. Doesn't mean we're less effective. It also means that we offer the opportunity to work for us to a wider audience, because one thing's for sure, even though, as we've discovered today, the technology doesn't always work the way you want it to. The truth of the matter is that technology is going to become more and more sophisticated with every passing month and with every passing year. What is difficult today becomes very easy in a matter of a very short period of time. So we've learned through having to that it's possible to do business, to work in business, even from home. There were lots of people that I've been speaking to about this point for several years that have always said to me, no, don't like it, don't like the prospect of people working from home. Well, here we are having to do that. And I think I've always said to them, it comes down to trust. If you trust your people, there's no reason why you should worry about them working from home. If they're good people and they've bought into the behaviors and values of your business, particularly if they're engaging with the CRM system so we can monitor what's going on, then there's absolutely no reason why they can't work from home. And that then, I think, gives us an awfully big opportunity to remodel our businesses in terms of the hours we work. So, the whole issue of 9 to 5 already seems archaic to me. I think that we will be looking at much broader hours, working shifts, if you like, people starting very early, finishing earlier, starting later, finishing later. We work in a 24/7 society. We've discovered talking to candidates, for example, because they're at home is a brilliant thing. And I think going forward, as we come out of this, we'll be looking at how we work, how we serve our customers, how we serve our candidates, and how we look at the positive impact of that on our cost base and the productivity opportunities that go alongside that. The other point I'd make here is that as we come out of this situation, if we go into this so-called recession, yes, there will be companies that will contract. There'll be some that will go out of business, but you will also see a boom in companies starting up. As the one thing we always see in these situations is small businesses growing and developing, coming out of these situations. So a whole range of new clients that will work with us that we don't even know about at this moment, but they will become evident to us in the next 18 months. I think there's a lot to be excited about. And I think that's the point that we need to be pushing on to our people, just to remind them that things are going to get better, that they will have wonderful opportunities going forward. There's a lot of years ahead for a lot of our young staff. This moment is something that will strengthen them, that will make them better people, better managers, better owners in the future when they open their own businesses. And there's a lot of positives to be had from this, even though, of course, what we're going through is a terrible crisis and very tragic in many respects. But once we come out of this, I think there'll be a lot of lessons to be learned and a lot of opportunities for us as an industry to improve our market share as businesses and to look forward to a very good and prosperous future.
I think it's very interesting as we start to bring sort of this to a close that two things I'll bring out. There's a client who I was doing a mentoring session with wrote back to me and sort of thanked for the stuff that I'd put in place and what he was doing to put in place to save his business and run his business. And he was doing all the right things that we've talked about and working from there. And at the end, he put down and said, thanks for your help. Other than sitting here wondering about my business and where I'm going, I'm actually, excuse my French, I'm actually shitting myself. but I think I've got a great opportunity to move forward. And I think, you know, everyone in our marketplace is probably doing that. But some people will bury their heads in the sand, and some people will go out and make hay while the sun shines. And I remember the recession in the 80s. My father ran a business, a construction business, and we were in Yorkshire, and there was a miners' strike, and you know, a lot of his construction work was based around that marketplace. And one of his clients went bang for an awful lot of money. And I remember sat on a Sunday afternoon having lunch. My older brother was working for him in time, and he said, "Dad, what are you going to do about that client?" And his comment was, "Son, if the world gives you shit, don't take a sniff and turn your nose up at it. Take a deep breath, grab a shovel, and get cultivating." And I think that's what we all need to do, is grab a shovel and get cultivating. And it's very interesting. What we talk about is the adaptability of the marketplace. Well, after every session, the marketplace changes. So how adaptable are we to that marketplace? So I think we've put an awful lot in thought process into this, what's going on. It's now time for action and actually starting to put things on paper with our staff, with yourself, of what your recovery plan should look like and what you should be doing in that recovery plan. So you can start to see the future. You can start to forecast where your business is going to be. And I think that's the light at the end of the tunnel. If people start to focus and see where their business is going to be, when you're talking to your clients, and you can see which clients are going to come out fast and running, so you can see where you can start to make your money and how you're going to recover, and where you can put your major focus on when you come back. So I'd like to thank everyone. Paul, I'd like to thank yourself again. Great input there. I'd like to make one point, is that obviously we Love Work Life Consulting, and we also own Love Work Life Training Academy. Tomorrow I'm doing a session for all recruiters on how to build a pipeline that lasts in this marketplace. For all business owners that are on this call, if you want to come talk to me about putting a training and development plan in place now for your staff through this period, forget the pricing structure that's on the website. Just come and talk to me. I'm going to be putting out a pricing structure which I think will be very advantageous, where we'll do live training and we'll do video-based training, so you can work on your existing staff, your furloughed staff, and those that are in and out of the office, etc., and working that way. I want to make sure that, you know, if this has been recorded, because I'm not too sure about the technology, whether it's recorded or not, you can get access to that. So it will be on our website. So if you go to our management chat room on our website, all the videos that we've done and all the training videos that we've done are all on those websites. So that just leaves me to wish everyone, you know, good health, stay healthy, keep working hard, keep liking and sharing the posts out there, and, you know, keep a good focus on the future, because the future is bright and the future is going to be absolutely amazing if you make it. And it's down to you to now write that future for yourself. Guys, thank you very much. If you've got any questions and you want to fire some questions over, please fire some questions over. If you've got any thoughts, fire those thoughts over as well. I look forward to hearing from you.
See you guys. Take care. Keep well.
Hang on, Paul. There's maybe some questions coming through.
Okay.
No questions, guys? Right, if anyone's got questions, then I'm going to close the poll, close the webinar off. Sorry about the technology not working quite as it should do. Okay, and I wish you all the best, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers, goodbye.